in terms of today, the stuff we're going to go through is mostly surrounding food quality. We're going to have a look at different variations and nutrition protocols for you guys to basically stay on track and stay aligned with your goals at the weekend, which I know that's Jamie, something you said that you wanted to look into a little bit better. So did Chris. So we're just going to look at stuff like calorie swaps and different things that you can incorporate through the week to basically stay on track with your goals a little bit better. And then to finish, we're going to have a look at the meal tracking or meal planner tool, which I've had built by some IT guy, which is pretty cool. So I'll just give you a lot of clarity and new touch points to basically plan your meals across the space of a week. So, I mean, yeah, I just want to hear back from you guys in terms of motivation. If everyone just drops on a scale of say 1 to 10, where's everyone's motivation at the moment? Just drop it in the chat box so I can get a good idea of what everyone's feeling like this week. Because I know obviously as the further and further we get into lockdown, it tends to get a little bit more, motivation starts to drop off. You start getting used to your home workouts. They're not as interesting and stuff. So is there anything anyone's struggling with in particular, or feel free to unmute your mic if you want to ask something? No? Everyone all right? I'm going to assume everyone is fine then if no one's piping up. So we'll just get stuck in stuff. Okay, so in terms of understanding food quality, Abby, you've been very emotional this week. Do you want to elaborate on that, Abby? Do you want to unmute?
It's only Monday, and it feels like I've been very emotional today.
Yeah. Anything in particular?
And yesterday, just I think for feeling frustrated, just with like life at the moment, and just sort of going through a bit of a dip, and that tends usually for me, like I turn towards like comfort eating. So
your support side of things, get that support from food.
Yeah. So trying not to do that. I'm just currently cutting some green beans.
Yeah. So one thing to consider, guys, which is, one of the things I really started hitting home with you, especially in lockdown, is mindset and motivational shift. So like I was saying at the start, you're never going to be 10 out of 10 all of the time. So it's really important that you have those systems and the structure in your week so that when you hit those days where you're really on a lull, you've got the support from the stuff you've already prepared in the week, that you're not just going to have to make poor choices and bad decisions. You've already got your food prepped, you know exactly when your workouts are scheduled, so that once those habits are ingrained, you're much less likely to be influenced by your emotional responses, if that makes sense. So it's just about having the structure, and that's why every Sunday I tag, I know you're probably sick of it by now, but me tagging you in and saying, right guys, what are the outcome goals? What is it you're wanting to achieve specifically, so that you all have a clear target, and regardless of something might happen one day that's going to make you a little bit pissed off, a little bit more unmotivated, doesn't make a difference to you essentially getting emotional and leading to going in, ordering a massive Domino's, or just resorting to that support from food. You're getting it from your exercise and your pre-planning. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Abby. I appreciate it. I'm sure it's something a lot of people struggle with generally in motivation. So that's decent. Okay, so yeah, going back to food quality, I basically just want to touch on the outlines of what I essentially mean by this, and how you guys can essentially have a little bit of structure into not only planning your meals if you're just kind of doing it off the whim and you've not got anything structured, but also going into using this new meal planner, how you can incorporate that to make essentially the best choices that align with your specific targets and stuff. So if we go kind of just identifying in terms of what things are for food quality, and the way the body processes it is, food to the body is essentially data. So what do I mean by that? In terms of, if you eat something, your body will generate a response, an automated response to make use of that food, which is why we have your three main macronutrient groups, your protein, your carbs, and your fats. And each food source will stimulate a different response in the body. So that's essentially where palatability comes in, and nutrient quality. So when I say food quality from a scientific standpoint, it would only be the vitamins, minerals, essentially the genetic makeup of the food. And that's not necessarily as important for you guys, because as general population, you're not looking to be world-class athletes. What's really important is that you massively consider the taste element of it. So ultimately deciding, pre-planning your meals for sustainability and long-term dietary adherence, you want to find a balance between finding food that tastes good and that essentially has a high enough nutrient profile or nutrient quality that it's going to aid and support your training and recovery goals. Does that make sense? Just give me a nod for somebody. Jamie, you make sense. So that's fine. So it's basically just identifying and finding that balance. That if you think of it as like a slider, you've got boring body food, building food here, and ultimately tasty food, pizzas, burgers. You're looking to generally slide stuff in between and find that balance that it's high enough nutrient quality for you to make progress, but it's still enjoyable and tastes good long term. So that's what we're going to look to build throughout this presentation, essentially, is finding alternatives for you all that you can. Dwayne's just entering now. Now then, Dwayne, can you see, just joining. Now then, Dwayne, just drop yes in the chat if you can see the presentation for me. Let's carry on in a sec. Yeah, that's all good. Okay, guys, so moving on from food quality, what I want to do then is kind of set you up with some pre-screening questions so that eventually these will become subconscious questions that you ask yourself when you're trying to build a plate. Now, this is something that you can essentially apply to eating out, or, you know, if you're caught out without your meal plan, if you're going into an example, a petrol station, basically preemptive questions that are going to prompt you to buy the best outcome for your goals specifically. So in terms of what I mean by building a high performance plate, is basically a hierarchy of things that you'll go through to basically align your thought process with picking the right foods. So something to consider first is identifying food groups as essential and non-essential. This is ultimately going to determine why you're picking things. So as most of you will know the basics of nutrition, there's three main macronutrient food groups: your protein, your fats, and your carbohydrates. Now, protein and fats are both essential to the body. We all know by now that you need protein for recovery and general bodily functions, and the same with fats for cognitive brain function and hormone health. Now, carbohydrates themselves are non-essential. We don't actually need them, but we do perform better for medium to high intensity exercise if we have them in our diets. Now, that's the facts around the three macronutrient groups. So we're going to use that information to essentially build these prompting questions to help you make better choices by asking yourself these questions every time you're either prepping a meal or you're eating out somewhere. Okay. So key questions to ask would be number one, which you should all be very familiar with this question by now because it's in your check-in every fucking week, is does this meal contain a protein serving of 20 to 25 grams? So there's a few reasons why I do this, explain it behind for you all really, is obviously we need protein for muscle growth, which if you're trying to build more muscle and be leaner, essentially become lean mass, you want to eat lean mass. So that's the first one. The second reason is it's more satiating. So you all know by now that eating higher protein meals is going to leave you a lot fuller for longer. So generally speaking, if you center the meal or the plate of food around a protein source, it's generally speaking going to keep you fuller for longer and mean that you're less likely to snack in between meals. Now, the reason they say protein is more satiating is simply because it takes the body or the stomach longer to digest it. So the body's essentially preoccupied, so you don't get hungry as much. Okay, so that's the first question I want you to think about when you're either making a meal or prepping, or if you were to go to a restaurant, looking at the menu, you can look beforehand is a great opportunity to pre-screen the menu and think, right, is there an option where I can essentially have just like a protein source? It might be steak, it might be a chicken breast, some lean salmon, cod, that kind of thing. They're all great ideas for protein sources and you want to center that meal around it, okay? So the second question would be, does this meal contain a fat serving? So obviously you've all been tracking your calories since starting with me, so you should all have a good idea of around your individual fat target. Now, obviously fat sources can come individually or they can come combined in food. So for example, if you did order a steak, you'd want to be considering the fat content. Whereas if you order something like chicken or turkey at a restaurant, you know it's generally going to be leaner. So you've got a little bit more wiggle room to have a fat source with it. So this might be a salad with some avocado on it. It might be the fact that you don't actually want to have fat in that meal specifically, and you might save some of your fats for a snacking option later in the day. So it's just starting, once you start asking these questions, it makes you become more conscious of the different things that you're building around the plate. Okay. So the third one is, does this meal contain 1 to 2 servings of vegetables? Now, I know Chris was asking about different ways that you can get more veg and stuff into your meals. Essentially, if you just stick by that rule, make sure that you've got 2 palm-sized servings of veg with every meal. You can't go too wrong. You're going to hit your veg quota for the day. Now, there's a couple of reasons why we do that. So if you've watched some of the nutrition videos that I uploaded to the client community, one of them was on calorie density foods versus high volume. So the difference being, high volume foods where you get a lot of food per portion for very low calorie quantities. So if you were to look at what, say, 150 calories look like of peanut butter compared to, I think the analogy I use in the video is prawns, but if we did that compared to broccoli, so 150 calories of broccoli versus peanut butter, you'd realize looking at it straight away which one is going to keep you more full for longer. Okay, so you get more food for more bang for your buck per calorie. Okay, so if you've done those first 3 things, generally speaking, you've covered what we talked about before about your essential and non-essential macronutrient food groups. So you've got your protein in, you got your fats in, you got your vitamins and minerals because you've got 1 to 2 servings of veg. Once you've done those first 3 things, then you can look at adding carbs to your plate. So I've put down here, it says suitable. What do I mean by that? So if you're a little bit more educated on nutrition and you understand the hierarchy of, the macronutrient food groups, and you start looking deeper into food quality, you can start looking at different variations of carbohydrate sources. So you'll all be very familiar with the term like refined carbohydrates, which are simple sugars or simple carbs. So you can then look at, in terms of suitable carbohydrates, what time of the day you're having them. So if you're on limited calories and you're in a calorie deficit trying to lose body fat, ideally you want to be having the majority of your carbohydrates around your training because they're going to give you the most energy. So something to consider here is, or a saying that my old strength coach used to say is, give your body what it needs when it needs it. So because protein and fats are the only essential macronutrients, you need them throughout the day, but you don't need carbs first thing if you're not training. You only need them around your resistance training. So does that all make sense? So it's just about manipulating your daily planning for your meals to try and center the carbs around where you'll use them. So does that make sense to everyone? I'm going to use Jamie again as my nodder because he's only the person that I can see. Okay, guys. So we're going to move on to, in terms of how to enjoy yourself at the weekend. So me included, guilty, weekend offender. That's where I accumulate most of my calories. So I know for a lot of you guys are pretty social people. So it's either alcohol or, stuff like takeaways is where you're going to accumulate most of your calories in the week. So I wanted to put together a couple of ideas that are essentially going to help you leverage your calories a lot better. And it's something that I've talked about quite a lot in my posts on Instagram before, if you've followed me for a while. And it's just going to help you start thinking about pre-planning your week a little bit better. So again, going back to that Sunday planning, when I tank you all in, one of the main reasons that I'm so pushy with the planning is that if you can identify your obstacles in the week before they come, you can actually have a lot more flexibility if you pre-plan ahead, because it's easy to manipulate your calories to be able to enjoy them on days where you require more calories. Okay. So we're going to look at an example of what that essentially would look like. So, lost it. There we go. So one of the options, which I've gone through with some of you before, is essentially calorie budgeting. So let's move that. Yeah, so if you look at the 2 different charts, they both accumulate, basically looks at calorie distribution across the space of a week, Monday to Sunday. Now, the example used is somebody who's on a weekly target of 11,900 calories. Now, the way that you would distribute these calories across the space of the week could ultimately determine whether or not you stay on track with your goals. So something to consider would be identifying the obstacles the week before, or if you know that, say, by Wednesday you've got something like a social event coming up at the weekend, or Jamie used the example of how do I enjoy pizza a little bit more without necessarily going over on my calories. This is the perfect situation to do that. And it's something that I use all the time. I eat pretty Spartan through the week, Monday to Thursday. I eat pretty boring food, and I'm happy with that because it allows me to enjoy more calories on the weekend without absolutely blasting myself over my calories. So, how you would do that is if we focus on the calorie weekly total, which is 11,900, as an example for someone who was having 1,700 calories a day. What you can do is if you look at the second graph on the bottom, is if you skim 200 calories off each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday, that's going to give you an extra 1,000 calories to either use on one day or an extra 500 calories on Friday and Saturday. Now, for most of you who are pretty regimented with your tracking and are on top of your goals, that's quite a lot of extra calories to have. It's almost an extra meal. It could be 2 or 3, especially if your drinks are, lower calorie options like slimline gin and slimline tonics, that kind of thing. Having an extra 500 calories on the weekend is actually a pretty reasonable amount, or 1,000 if you want to accumulate them on one day. So the main thing that I want to hit home with for this, guys, is it really is in the planning. So when I'm asking you in your check-ins, I'm going to be updating the questions over the next couple of weeks to help you guys pre-plan a little bit better. So really looking at your week, Monday to Sunday, and going, is there anything that's going to potentially throw me off track? I mean, I know right now nobody can actually go out, but on a normal working week, am I going for a meal Wednesday night, or it might be I'm going for work drinks after work. It might be something like, for Dwayne, it might be playing rugby at the weekend and the lads are going out afterwards. Whatever it is, it's just about becoming self-aware and proactive in your planning to basically establish which are the obstacle days and how you would manipulate your calories through the week to essentially account for that extra day. Now, one thing that I want to highlight that's really important is going back to what we talked about with your essential and non-essential macronutrients. To do this, if you were to reduce your calories Monday to Thursday, it would have to come from your carbohydrate consumption or targets. You couldn't really take your fats or proteins too low because they're essential. We're looking to still promote healthy bodily function, and because you're all still going to be training, you need that protein to recover and generally just promote more of a lean body mass tissue. Okay, so does that make sense to everyone? Just pop in the chat if you've got any questions about that, and I'm happy to answer them. Any questions? Nope. Okay, guys, let's have a look at the second option. So the first one being we've covered calorie budgeting. Now the second one is essentially identifying food swaps. So if you're like me and you're a bit of a sucker for ice cream, favorite stuff, Ben & Jerry's cookie dough, it's basically writing down a list of your top 10 foods that you enjoy the most, because as you all know, I promote an inclusive, not exclusive dieting approach if you're trying to get leaner, which is essentially, I want you guys to all be able to enjoy your favorite foods without the side effects of the excess calories that comes with a lot of them. Okay, so one of the main things that you can do is write down a list of, say, your top 5 to 10 favorite foods, and just be a little bit proactive with your research and look for different alternatives that essentially give you the same enjoyment and fulfillment from the food, but at less of an expense of, say, exerting your daily allowance in one tub of Ben & Jerry's. Because let's be honest, I don't know anyone who's tucking into a Ben & Jerry's and going, yeah, I'm going to have 2 scoops. Like, you go in for the full tub. Let's be honest. And I do it too. So if I'm going to have a tub of ice cream, I'd rather have a Halo Top. I can enjoy the whole tub and it's 360 calories. I mean, look, if you look at the comparison, it's like a quarter of the calories. It's a no-brainer. It's just a case of, again, of being really proactive in your approach, becoming self-aware and realizing that the reality is you're in this for the long run, and you want to start finding different alternatives that are really going to allow you to enjoy your favorite foods long term without being restrictive. Now, again, this comes down to a variation in your approach. So, some of you are relatively new to coaching with me. So, like Dwayne, Corbin, you guys are new to the team. So, at the start, generally speaking, we'll tend to go for a little bit more of a strict, aggressive dieting approach so that you see some pretty good results quick. And then once you get into your goal weight and you're only looking to fine tune things, then that's when you can start looking to be a little bit more flexible with your approach and addressing it as more of a long term thing where you start bringing your calories back in a little bit higher once you've got to your goal weight. And then you just stay at that weight by just making proactive, smart choices with your food. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say if the best thing if you're dieting right now would be to smash a tub of ice cream. But when you've got past that and you've hit your goal weight and you're just looking to maintain, it's really just about finding those options that allow you to enjoy stuff. So, yeah, Ben and Jerry's is just one example. So let's have a look at option 2. So pizzas. Now, before any of you pipe up, I know that necessarily an Aldi pizza isn't necessarily going to be as tasty as a Domino's, but you have to meet me somewhere in the middle. So at the end of the day, if you're looking to lean up, you can either take two approaches, can't you? You're either going to go super strict and you're not going to enjoy any foods at all, or you're going to allow yourself a little bit of normality, but still meet me halfway. And you're going to go, right, well, I can have a full Domino's medium pepperoni, which comes to 1,680 calories for the full pizza. Or you could make a replacement and go for something like an Aldi, Romagna or whatever it's called, pretty similar pizza, pepperoni, and you're looking at a quarter of the calories again. So was that Chris that's just popped in the chat? Build muscle food. Was that from you, Jamie? Just give me a nod if you. It just says iPhone. Yeah, so Jamie's put in like muscle food, do a protein pizza in it. It tastes all right. So it's just a case of coming to terms with, are you serious about your goals? Do you still want to enjoy some kind of variation of food that you enjoy? Yes. Okay, well, let's look to meet somewhere in the middle. Enjoy your foods regularly on a weekly basis. Accept that they might not be as good as something, say, a Domino's, if that's what you're really craving, but it is going to allow you to enjoy foods and make progress whilst staying in your calorie goals for the space of a week. Okay, now there is another approach to look at this as well, and it's that if you're going to have something that's completely what we would consider off plan. Now, these tend to be things that I like to save for you guys when you hit certain milestones with your goals. So, for example, Tony and Jamie are both 10 kilos down in body fat, which is amazing. So, what we'd say then is, right, go for it. Have an off plan meal, enjoy it. Gives you a little bit of motivation, a little bit of normality. Then you realign your goals. Right, we're now looking to push for that next 10 kilos. Back to go into the Aldi ones on a weekly basis. So it just gives you a little bit of re-motivation, and it's something to consider about why I give you short, medium, and long-term goals, is so that we really focus on addressing your goals as phases, so that essentially nobody wants to be on a diet forever. So it's just about making sure that you have that end goal in sight, going right for the next 12 weeks, we're going to really push the diet, enjoy ourselves a little bit of a reward, and then we're going to tighten things up again and push even further. Does that make sense? So, okay, so last thing we've got to go on is the ultimate meal planner. So this is something that I've had made by Tony, who owns Graft House, who's an absolute computer nerd. So he's put this together for me, and let me just go on it. Okay. I'm going to show you guys how to use this. Now, can you see an Excel spreadsheet, or is it still my iPad? Could someone just pop in the chat what they can see on the screen right now? Still the iPad. Okay, just bear with me a sec. How about now? Is it a spreadsheet? Like an Excel? Wicked. Okay, guys, so what you're going to get is you're all going to get an individual copy of this shared to you on Google Drive. Now, this is something that you can use at the beginning of a week to essentially it's just another tool that I wanted to get made to give you guys some added value. So as you come to the spreadsheet, you've all got your individual calorie targets. What you do is you can see at the top here, you'd put in your total fats, carbohydrate, protein targets, and it'll automatically calculate your calories. Now, this could change for each day, and each person has a different personal preference. So you can go number of meals. So if you're somebody who likes eating in just 3 meals, which is absolutely fine, go 3 meals. And what you then have is that'll divide your target that you've put in the top into 3 different even meal breakdowns, so that you can essentially make your 3 meals, and it'll just block out the other ones in red that you don't need to do. So using that, if we use that 1700 calories as an example, let's say 50 grams of fat. Let's see what this comes out at. Okay, so below, it'll basically tell you, you see how it's highlighted red, from the food you've inputted, whether that meets within your individual targets. So if we go on putting together as well, like what we said about building a plate, we're looking to get that protein source first. So it literally has a massive database that we've put in, like MyFitnessPal. So let's just go say chicken breast. Chicken breast cooked, cool. Go on the amount, 100 grams, enter, it'll bring it up and see how it's updated the top. And it'll do that for each individual meal target as well. So as you can see, 1700 calories has been broken down into 3 lots of 5, 6, 7. So this meal's target is 5, 6, 7. 50 grams of protein, 50 grams of carbs, 20 grams of fat. Okay, so let's add in some carbs. Let's go rice. Let's go brown rice or white rice. Let's go long grain. There we go. So let's say we have 125 grams of that. Okay, so you see at the bottom for this meal target, that's taken us over the target. So you just want to adjust that. So maybe 50, cool, that now fits in within the target. And you can just use this to really build your meals up throughout the week and just pre-plan stuff. So it saves you pre-putting it into MyFitnessPal if you just plan your meals on. So let's just say we want to add 2 portions of veg. So let's go broccoli as an example. Let's go again 50 grams. Let's go green beans. And again, 50 grams. So you're getting a good 100 gram serving of veg. You've got your protein and your carb sources, and they're all looking underneath the target. So you might want to top that protein up. So you might go 125 grams or 130, let's say 140. So you can just keep adjusting them until it essentially comes up to hit the right amount of carbs, really. So any macronutrient, you just keep adjusting until it lines up. There we go. So that's looking a bit closer. 140 for your protein. I'll go 150. Cool. So you see you got 46 grams of protein, target's 50. 44 grams of carbs, target's 50. 5 grams of fat, target's 20. That's not too unimportant if you're having some fats for your snacks later on, say. And then you just go on to the next meal and you can mix and match it again. Now, the reason why there's 2 carb sources to make this really easy for you is that you might want a condiment or some kind of sauce with it. So that would be where your second carb source comes in. So if we typed into there, sauce, you get all these different types of sauces that, you know, peppercorn, soy, teriyaki, sweet chili. Let's just go with a sweet chili. You might have, I don't know, 30 grams. What does that add in? Okay, so that adds in another 13 grams. It takes you over your carbs, so you might just want a bit less. bit less again. Let's go 20 grams, keep it nice and tidy. That's close enough. So you're not going to go too far wrong. So yeah, you can just use this to really build out on a weekend what you want to eat for the next few days. Because obviously I advise doing 2 prep days a week, and you can just really forecast and plan out your meals. So I hope that's, a valuable tool for you all and something that you can all get stuck into. The best part about it is that it's got an individual ingredients list. So if it doesn't have the foods you regularly eat on there, you just go onto your ingredients list and you can add them manually so that it tops up these drop down menus, and it'll just sort it up alphabetically automatically for you. So for those of you that eat the same foods regularly, it's really handy. But yeah, does anyone have any questions on that? No. No questions? Okay, guys, that's absolutely fine. So I'll be getting that sent out as soon as possible this week. And again, I'm going to put together like a little PDF brief just to remind you of how to, use it and put it together and how to update the ingredients list. But for those of you that can't really be bothered to track on MyFitnessPal, if you put your meals into this at the start of the week or a weekend, and you're only eating the foods that are here, you're going to hit your targets literally 100% bang on. So yeah, if anyone does have any questions, just let me know. But yeah, that we'll call it at that. Awesome, guys. Right, I will see everyone individually through the week with our usual messages and check in on Thursday. So yeah, thanks, guys. Hope you all have a really good evening and speak soon.
Bye.
Nice one. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Nice one. Cheers, Andy.
All right, guys. Thank you. Feel free to leave, guys. Don't worry, I'm just hanging about in case anyone's got any questions.